The mother of my two children, twins, a boy and a girl, broke our marriage union. During the marriage, she became pregnant by another man. I found out about this event under unpleasant circumstances when I caught her with the man. After a conversation, she admitted that this man was probably the father of the child she was expecting. I immediately made the decision to divorce her. After her youngest daughter was born, I had a DNA test done which showed that she was not my daughter. During the divorce process, custody and financial support issues were only resolved for our mutual children. I paid child support as my income was higher than hers. Despite everything, we maintained equal custody of the children, and I continued to be actively involved in their lives. My ex-spouse lived with the father of her youngest child until last October. Then he suddenly left without leaving behind any explanation and disappeared from their lives. She has been trying to get child support from him ever since, but he has been impossible to find. He even quit his last known job, so her attempts have been unsuccessful. This has caused financial hardship for her, and I have started buying more things for our mutual children so that they don't suffer because of the situation. Last month, my ex told me about the difficulty in financing the expenses for her youngest child and asked me to help with grocery shopping, including for her. I refused, pointing out that I was only responsible for my own children and would not fund the consequences of her decisions. She insisted, claiming that their lives could have turned out differently if I had helped even now. I replied that it wasn't my problem, and perhaps she would consider it in the future before starting another affair. She told our children about our conversation and asked them to contact me. The children were confused as they had always known that their half-sister was not my child. My children began to doubt after their mother told them that caring men are always supportive of all children. She argued that any child who becomes part of the family deserves unconditional love. Turning to me, the children asked about things for their stepsister, mentioning that their mother had asked them to do so. I explained that even though the stepsister is not my child and is not part of my family, she is still a part of their lives. My children wanted to understand the reasons why. The eldest remembered a time when their mother and I were together and she was expecting a baby. I explained that her mother had been pregnant with their half-sister when we were still together, but DNA tests showed that I was not the father. This was the reason I was not involved in her upbringing. I emphasized that I remained their father and that our relationship had not changed. However, I have never been and do not consider myself a father to their half-sister and therefore cannot provide for her needs in the same way as I do for theirs. My children understood my position and upon returning to their mother, relayed our discussion to her. This caused her displeasure. She called me, expressing disapproval that I had shared more information with the children than she desired. I responded that the children had always known about the differences in our relationship with their half-sister and it should have remained obvious, especially now that their biological father had left them. She called me cruel and unfair, but I knew it was important to remain clear under the circumstances. She was the one who sent the children to ask you. She probably assumed you'd say no. Knowing this, the kids might have wanted to understand why people often look for blame when they encounter problems. Obviously, you're not responsible for her youngest child, and you're not wrong to refuse to get involved in her financial affairs after the divorce. However, if you believe that she is truly struggling financially and cannot provide the basic necessities for her child, it may be worth considering periodic help with basic necessities without handing her money directly. This can be a lesson in compassion for your children, even toward those they don't know. You don't have to be responsible for maintaining her home, but if she's really struggling to support 3 children, you could discuss changing custody arrangements to reduce the financial costs. Although I'm not a lawyer, I have read that in some cases the non-biological parent can be held financially responsible if they have previously supported the child. However, I would not recommend increasing financial support given that your ex has improperly involved the children in your adult problems. If circumstances show that she is unable to adequately care for the children, it may be worth considering transferring primary custody to you. This would reduce her financial burden and allow her to focus on her youngest child. Such a move could also help protect your children from the emotional pressure she creates by having them ask you for help for a child who is not yours. Next story. Currently, my husband and I are both 35 years old. We have had 10 wonderful years together, despite the global challenges we have faced. Every week we play Dungeons & Dragons with 3 of our friends. The games are 3 to 4 hours long and are played through Zoom. Over the past few years, we have accumulated many exciting adventures. My husband runs the game, and he handles the preparation of the sessions, creating characters to interact with, designing battle scenarios, and so forth. I really appreciate his efforts. On the other hand, I take on most of the housework. I'd cook, clean the kitchen, do laundry, and basically drive the car. We used to try to divide the chores evenly around the house. There was a period when he would fold laundry or help clean while I did the cooking, but that only lasted 1 or 2 weeks. I usually don't mind doing these tasks myself, but lately has been especially difficult due to health issues in the family, which has added to our stress. Recently, while eating dinner, my husband showed me some magical items he had created for a new town blacksmith. My reaction left him unhappy, and when he asked why, I said that I would love it if he would help me clean up the kitchen after the meal. This caused a serious argument between us. We don't usually argue often, so this added to the tension given that I didn't appreciate his contribution to our game. I expressed my opinion by pointing out that my husband can devote as much time to his hobby as he sees fit. However, that is not comparable to helping around the house. My husband, Ed, argued that his efforts in organizing a campaign for the game were equivalent to daily chores such as cooking and cleaning. He believed that by creating opportunities for weekly get-togethers with friends, he was managing our social lives, which also required considerable effort. In his eyes, this was a valid argument leading to misunderstandings between us. The situation became more complicated as I felt confusion and Ed was quite upset. He emphasized that my questions about his contributions indicated that I did not appreciate his hard work invested in the campaign. Ed recalled the time he had spent organizing the game as a host, which was not just a job for him, but a fascinating hobby. He also pointed out that cooking for me was also not a chore, as we could well afford to eat out regularly and hire a cleaning lady to clean the apartment. He's right, financially we can afford it, but the suggestion sounded a little strange. In the end, I decided to let this conversation go, even though I feel like I need to find a solution to this problem. There's a growing resentment in me. I'm not looking to win an argument and I'm not looking for excuses, but I would like to figure out how best to resolve this conflict. You're wrong. Time set aside for hobbies should be used that way, not for household chores. After all, participating in games like Dungeons & Dragons requires considerable preparation. It's not just a fun activity, but one that takes up a lot of time, taking it away from hobbies like painting miniatures, reading, and other games. Despite this, I have always found time for cleaning, cooking, and other chores. Laundry also remains a necessity. The arguments against this seem unconvincing to me. Often the line between hobby time and free time seems rather thin. I wondered what would happen if a person stopped controlling this process and allowed themselves to immerse themselves in the game completely. Whether it is worth the effort remains an open question. However, you acknowledge that organizing such events requires a lot of work. You also wondered whether you value the joy of participating in these events more than the opportunity to reduce household chores and relieve stress. Of course, participating in D&D is different from doing chores at home. I've participated in a lot of these games over the past 30 years. A hobby that one enjoys doesn't always mean you're off the hook for tasks like cleaning the kitchen that few people enjoy. Developing a D&D game can be fun, and while it is work, it is enjoyable work. Now I want to tell a different story. I'm 16 years old, I'm a guy. My dad started an affair around the time he and my mom conceived me, and my half-sister Jessie was born as a result. Even then, my older sister Winter, who was 18 years old, was already in the family. After me, my brother Hayes and John were born, both still in their teens. 6 years ago, we found out that Jessie was our half-sister. This discovery led to the breakup of my parents' marriage. My dad ended up reuniting with Jessie's mom, which caused a rift in her own family. After my father and Jessie's mom separated, they maintained a relationship. Winter and I had known Jessie since high school, but we hadn't been close until that momentous reveal. That's when we had our first real conversation with Jessie. She insisted that we should treat her like a sibling and that her parents now demanded that we always include her in our family. She has maintained this behavior ever since, believing that we can't communicate without her. Jessie often intervenes in conversations, trying to rewrite history by including herself in it. John tried to get close to her, but she yelled at him several times because he didn't respond the way she wanted him to. For example, in a conversation about visiting Universal Studios, she insisted that it was the first time we were supposed to be there together, to which he countered that we had already been there. She also talked several times about the Christmas holidays we supposedly spent together, although this was not true. When we spend time as a family at my dad's house, Jessie makes up stories about the past that we haven't experienced. She also makes comments about her mom bringing discord into the family, which usually leads to conflicts between me and my sister Winter against her. Our relationship with Jessie leaves a lot to be desired. I can't claim that any of us have hatred for Jessie. Perhaps Winter is the exception. I personally don't see her as a relative or a complete family member. In 2 years, I plan to cut off contact with both her and her father. I am in a good mood, as this is the first year since the divorce that my mom can take us on vacation. She decided to make it special since Winter is going off to college in the fall. Jessie found out about the vacation from her dad. He was unhappy that mom was using the opportunity to extend custody for 2 weeks in the summer for a vacation, and he wasn't happy about it. Winter refused to take a family vacation this year and no longer see her father since she had turned 18. Jessie insisted that we couldn't go on a family vacation without her and that she had to be included in the plans. I replied that this was not going to happen, to which she stated that we should invite her because she is our sister. I said she is not my mom's daughter. She claimed that we are family and that she is our sister. I pointed out that she would not be welcome at our family vacation with my mom, that she never was and never would be welcome. She yelled at me and my dad got mad at me for upsetting her by calling it stupid and expressing his anger in an argument. You're not an idiot. It's unclear who indoctrinated Jessie with the notion that she should always be included in family plans just because you are related by blood. That's absurd. At her age, she should already have enough critical thinking skills to realize that not all family decisions are solely about her. Yes, she's still a child, but that doesn't mean everyone has to coordinate with her all the time. Your dad should handle the situation no matter what the circumstances. Jessie's mom may have filled her head with various ideas that your father is the cause of all this family drama. When you turn 18, you can decide whether or not to continue to communicate with Jessie. Talk to your close siblings. Explain that sometimes it's better to keep quiet and not share plans with Jessie. Let your father know that it's best to be careful how you express yourself. Don't let your parents' drama affect your confidence in future. Go ahead, hold your head high, get the best education possible, and pursue happiness without letting family issues pull you back. Put that chaos on the back burner. My next story. I am female, 56 years old, and have 3 children. Brad is 32, Emma is 29, and Sophia is 23. Brad lives 4 hours away from us. Emma recently moved back to our home. Sophia still resides with me and my husband. Emma was going through a difficult time in her personal life. Her relationship had become toxic, and we convinced her for safety and financial reasons to stay with us for a while. She is 32 weeks pregnant and expecting her firstborn, our first grandchild. Emma is actively working but has faced financial difficulties since ending the relationship and moving back home. Housing prices are extremely high in our area. We have a large 4-bedroom house that we purchased when our children were young. Each child has their own bedroom in the house. Right now, Brad's bedroom is empty except for a few times a year when he comes to visit. About 3 years ago, Brad moved out and hasn't done his room since. I did a thorough cleaning after he left and the room has been in need of renovation for a long time. I offered to help Emma update Brad's room as a nursery. Even though the newborn would be sleeping in our room for the first time, the nursery would be a great place to store the baby's things and sleep when he got older. My only stipulation was that a bed must remain in the room for Brad to stay in during his visits. If Brad came home, he could stay in his old room and Emma and the baby could stay in the new nursery. Despite the alternatives, this is currently the best solution for Emma, and we are confident we can make it work. I shared with Brad the plans to transform his room into a nursery. He reacted with dismay. Brad felt I should have asked his opinion rather than just communicating the decision. He expressed concern that his place in the family was being erased and said that it seemed to him to favor the new baby. Brad said he would no longer come home for vacations as he didn't feel welcome there. He mentioned the sentimental value of his room and expressed resentment that he thought I was thoughtlessly disposing of its history. I disagree with this statement. I love all my children and my future grandchild. My goal is to do the right thing given the limited resources we have. Brad only comes home a few times a year, spending less than 10 nights here. Having an empty room seems unreasonable given the needs of a growing family. You're not an idiot, was that a joke? Brad is already 32 years old. He has his own house, no need for a kid's bedroom at his parents' house. Need to cut the umbilical cord. Your son is always prone to dramatization. He's too old for childish tantrums. My brother took over my room back when we were just leaving for university. I couldn't imagine a grown man in his 30s being so offended by a room conversion. You have your own house, sir. It's just silly, really. Brad stated that you should have asked him. He asked you how much you paid for the mortgage. I'm not putting a question mark here because it's a rhetorical question. It's your house, not his. Rejoice in your new grandchild and be thankful for what you offer your children. Brad has been offered a perfectly acceptable place to live. If he needs to stay, he can safely stay with you. He is angry that the mess he left behind no longer belongs to him. Now he can use the air mattress in the basement. Oh, honey, at 32, Brad is old enough to realize that he can't keep a room in your house just to visit a few times a year. Using that room for your grandson is perfectly reasonable. Hopefully Brad can realize this, but you should certainly go ahead with your plans. A story that really surprised me. My husband is 57 years old and I am 49 years old. His mother, my mother-in-law, is 81 years old. She used to be a very independent woman. However, after my father-in-law died a few years ago, her health began to deteriorate. She can still walk, but has become considerably weaker. Her character has also changed. She has become softer and kinder. My husband admits that she is not always easy to get along with, but he considers it normal. I rarely communicated with her, given that she had her own life. We live not far from her, only a half-hour drive. She wishes her husband would visit more often and gets upset when she is not invited to participate in our activities. We recently took a trip to my husband's birthday party without her, as her presence would have limited our plans. She insisted that we make another trip and bring her. Last week, while we were visiting my family, my mother-in-law called my husband, informing him that she was seriously ill and in the hospital. My husband, clearly alarmed, immediately flew home with me to take care of the situation. It turned out that she wasn't that sick, but rather was experiencing a mild cold. The doctor said she could go home, but she insisted on being hospitalized. I assumed in front of my husband that she just wanted to stay in the hospital. He was shocked, but later admitted it was in her manner. Now she wants to stay with us because of her illness. I refused, believing she is faking it. My husband thinks I'm being selfish. Opie, you're an idiot. Those words sound like my mom saying them. We thought she was faking it, but it turned out to be the beginning of dementia and Alzheimer's. I now regret not giving her the attention she desired, looking back. After all, it would have been a small thing to her. She had lost someone not long before. Her loneliness remained unspoken. Let's remember what Opie said. We live very close, half an hour away, so he visits her every couple months. Opie lives half an hour away, and her husband visits his mom every few months. The poor woman clearly feels lonely and they don't even try. Yes, you're an idiot because you generally treat her coldly and lightly, even if she faked the recent panic. She is an 81-year-old widow living alone. She doesn't feel well and is probably afraid to be alone, given her frail condition. She wants to see her son more often. Perhaps her requests seem too great or burdensome, but it seems that you all could show more empathy. Consider becoming more actively involved in her affairs. Make your own conscious assessment of what she really needs and decide what you can reasonably do for her.